There are a million art prints about sex workers, but you almost never see writings by them, especially from the small-time hostess girls who sold their bodies at countryside inns. So when you come across a letter by one of these women, you can get something more valuable than facts and figures. You get to see life from their own eyes. Hatsu was one of these women. She wrote a letter describing her life, where she grew up, why her parents sold her to a brothel, and why she tried to escape. We're going to look at Hatsu's story and 3 other ladies of negotiable love. These 4 women didn't know each other, but they had one thing in common. They all wanted to leave. Hatsu was a hostess girl who tried to escape her brutal working conditions by doing something not many women did at the time, and her story comes with a bit of a twist at the end. She was born in Echigo province. Echigo was known as a great place to visit, not for you, but for brothel recruiters. Being one of the poorest places in the country, it had plenty of families desperate enough to sell their daughters into the sex trade. Most of Japan's prostitutes came from this one province. Hatsu's family was already poor, but when her parents fell ill, they also fell into debt. Recruiters had noses trained to sniff out the scent of hopelessness. One recruiter knocked and asked if they had a daughter to sell. Nothing makes more money than poverty. Her parents faced an agonizing choice, but they needed medicine, and they had 2 girls to feed. Since Hatsu was the eldest, they decided to enter her into a contract at a brothel inn far away. After a long journey, she finally got to the post station where her pleasure inn was. Post stations were rest stops on the major roads of Japan in the Edo period. These stations often had inns that not only provided food, but also a place to sleep, with the option of having a nice woman tuck you in. The villages surrounding these countryside post stations had a lot of things to do for fun. For example, you could get on an ox and get out of there. Hostess girls were a welcome source of escape for locals and travelers. They immediately put her to work, and she worked, and when she didn't work hard enough, the innkeeper beat her. It went like this day after miserable day, seeing men after miserable men, until one day she reached her limit and fell sick. The innkeeper allowed her to rest a bit, but right when she started recovering, he thrust her in front of customers again. Not only that, when customers were scarce, she had to trudge up the mountains to gather firewood. She didn't bother asking for more time to rest and heal, knowing the owner would only beat her. After a few months of still being sick, she finally found the opportunity to get out of town and buy some medicine. But standing there, she thought, if I go back right now, the master would put me back to work and I'll never recover. So Hatsu decided to rest at a family friend's place. After a few months, Hatsu finally recovered. She returned to the inn to face her master. He couldn't stop mouthing off about how much money she lost him. He was mad and did not let her forget it. He beat her every day. Even when Hatsu explained that she had gone to the capital, Edo, and had gained the protection of a powerful person there, the innkeeper did not relent. It was too much. Hatsu decided she needed help. So she did something women like her usually did not do. She wrote a letter to a local official asking to be released from service. The only reason we know about Hatsu is because she described her life story in this letter. But she might not have been completely honest, as we'll see in a bit. Normally, a father would have written a petition like this. But Hatsu explained that the man was more than 100 miles away, and the man was so poor he had to sell her in the first place, so he had no status or even time for this. And obviously, she didn't have a husband to fight for her, so she had to do it herself. The fact that she could write made her a bit special. Now, Japanese commoners were surprisingly literate, but still, most of the rural population couldn't write, especially rural women. She wrote in kana, the cursive script of women, with only a bit of kanji here and there. Pretty typical at the time, even educated women wrote mostly in kana. She did use proper vocabulary, showing that she had at least some education, or maybe someone helped her. Now, when Hatsu came back to the inn, she told the owner that she had gone to the capital and gained the protection of a powerful person there. But this was a lie. In the letter, Hatsu tried to justify the lie. She explained that when she went out to buy medicine, she slipped away to her father's friend, Rinbei, who gave her a place to stay, and also lent her money for daily expenses. They hatched a plan to help Hatsu escape. Rinbei wrote to the innkeeper a fake story, claiming that Hatsu had borrowed money from him and had run away to Edo, the capital. Since employers were responsible for the debts of their employees, Rinbei demanded the owner either pay back her debt or allow him to sell her elsewhere. It was a decent plan, but we know Hatsu came back, so clearly the innkeeper didn't buy it. Upon returning, she continued the lie to try to protect herself. She claimed she had gone to the capital and gained the protection of someone who worked for a Lord Mizuno. Apparently, Mizuno was a real lord, but she didn't meet him, she had only heard of his name. In the letter, Hatsu apologized for lying and said she thought mentioning Lord Mizuno would make the master stop beating her. It didn't. Now, since we only have Hatsu's side of the story, we can't fully trust it, even if you really want to. She might be biased, maybe working at a brothel was all sunshine and sushi, with 3 weeks of vacation a year. The bit about her going to buy medicine, then suddenly deciding to stay at an acquaintance's place to rest, is kind of suspect. It's likely she had planned to run away the moment she stepped foot out of the post station, but things didn't work out. And now, for the saddest part of the story, it ends here. We don't know what happened next, because we only have this one letter from Hatsu. This is pretty common. History is full of stories half-told and unsatisfying. Her letter was found among the papers of someone who lived in the same village as Rinbei. It might have been a first draft, and Hatsu sent a better version later, or she might not have sent anything at all. There's no evidence her plea for help reached anyone important, and it's likely that Hatsu did not escape. Alright, the next 3 stories are much shorter. They weren't self-written, they were from official records, but they still give us a good look at their lives. This one is about a serving girl named Nao. Her client Chohachi became obsessed with her and decided life wasn't worth living if he couldn't have her. Chohachi stopped visiting her for a few months, working hard to make enough money to buy out her contract and marry her. Unfortunately, a few months is an eternity in the brothel. Another man named Kihachi swooped in to buy her hand in marriage first. Furious, Chohachi marched into Kihachi's home, offering money for Nao. Kihachi refused. Chohachi then begged Nao to run away with him. She also said no. Not knowing what else to do, Chohachi left depressed and thought, well, there's nothing I can do except gather some young local men to kidnap her. He and his crew attacked the Kihachi household, killing 1 guest and injuring 2 servants. Realizing things had gone out of hand, Chohachi ran away from the area. The 2 lovebirds still lived, though. The local authorities confiscated Chohachi's assets and officially exiled him. He was already gone, but at least he could never come back. This Chohachi guy was a real piece of work because he's involved in our next story. The 3rd story is about a hostess girl named Man. Man had a young lover named Saichiro. And one day, she decided seeing his face every day beat seeing the faces of 20 random men. So she ran away. The couple ran to another village and stayed at the house of Saichiro's friend. Turns out our man Chohachi was a bit of a detective because he somehow found them and told Man's innkeeper. Maybe he wanted her for himself, it's not clear. Chohachi and the innkeeper burst into the house to drag Man back. The wife of Saijiro's friend tried to stop them, but got injured in the struggle. Seeing his lover about to be pulled back to a life of servitude, Saijiro found the courage to stand up and run away. The innkeeper brought Man back. A local official oversaw this incident and decided both the innkeeper and Saijiro were at fault and put them in chains as a light punishment. Now, our 4th story is a happier one. Masu was a hostess girl working at an inn. One of her clients, Isuke, was madly in love and vowed to buy her out and marry her. However, he had a problem. He wasn't exactly rolling in coins. Knowing he didn't stand much of a chance, he enlisted the help of his 2 elder brothers. Together, they scraped up some money and visited the innkeeper. The negotiations did not go well. They tried again and again, but they couldn't agree on a good price. Frustrated and sad, Isuke tried something different. This time, he paid a 3rd party, a guy named Zennosuke. We don't know much about this guy, but he might have been someone important in town or a master negotiator. It turned out to be the right move. After a last round of negotiations, they made a deal, and Isuke paid off the rest of Masu's contract and married her. We know about this story because the 2 elder brothers wrote a thank you letter to this Zennosuke guy. They talked about how hard Isuke worked for this marriage and promised to take full responsibility for Masu's behavior from then on. It seemed to be a good deal for Masu. Sometimes the person who buys you out is rich, but not necessarily kind. Isuke seemed to be earnest, and since he got his brothers to help, we can guess that Masu married into a family that approved of the match, and also a family that had enough money to pay for her release. Now, that was great for Masu, but most sex workers did not end up escaping that life before their contracts ended. Even the beginning of their lives were not great. Remember Echigo province? Most sex workers in Japan were recruited from Echigo, especially its main city of Niigata, because it was a really poor area with many parents who were willing to enter their daughters into brothel contracts to survive. Click here to learn all about Echigo, the source of Japan's prostitutes. We have some new members on Patreon and YouTube today. Peter, Daniel, Chris Morrison, and Virgilicia Name. Name? Name. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much, you guys. All right, I love you, and spread the knowledge.